Hello and welcome to the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club. I'm Marlo Artist. The Tar Heel Teachers Book Club is our monthly opportunity to dissect great books. Each month, I'm happily joined by a wonderful group of North Carolina educators who love dissecting great texts. We'll start our introductions with our friend from Carteret County.
Hey everybody, my name is Emily Golightly and I am a K-5 media coordinator at Newport Elementary School. I'm also the North Carolina Reading Association's vice president, and you can find me on Twitter at Emily Golightly3.
Hello, my name is Kelly Poquette. I'm the 2021 Burroughs Welcome Fund Piedmont Tri-Region Teacher of the Year and a K-5 music educator at the Alamance Virtual School in Alamance County. Please join me on Twitter. I'm at KA Poquette.
Hi everyone, I'm Pamela Sands. I'm a digital learning facilitator in Cumberland County and a former media coordinator. I am two-time Cumberland County Media Coordinator of the Year and two-time North Carolina School Library Media Association Media Coordinator of the Year. And you can find me on Twitter at LivingFantastic.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arisha Smalls, and I am the AIG Program Coordinator for Cumberland County Schools. And you can follow me on Twitter at SmallsArisha.
Hello, my name is Amy Tart, and I teach fourth grade ELA and social studies in Clinton City Schools. And you can follow me on Twitter at Cards for Scholars.
Great. For our February 2022 Tar Heel Teachers Book Club selection, our pick is Starfish by Lisa Fipps. Be sure to share your thoughts on Twitter by using our hashtag #THTBookClub. Starfish is a charming novel in verse about a girl struggling with self-worth. Ellie is a middle school girl who is bullied every day about her weight, whether it comes from her classmates, her siblings, or even her mother. Ellie is constantly bombarded with comments about her size. Starfish is a 2022 Michael L. Prince Award for Excellence in Young Adult Literature honor book, and we're so excited to highlight this book on the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club. Where should we start?
I'll start with, I love this book. I didn't expect to sob my way through it, and just the way that people talked to Ellie and the way they treated her, but none so much as her mom. That broke my heart. And one of the things that made me so upset the whole time is that her dad was always on her side and standing up for her and doing things to make her feel comfortable in her skin. But he didn't stop her mom from putting the articles about diets and weight loss on the refrigerator and standing up to her the way I wanted him to. And I just don't even know why he tolerated her.
Yeah, I really was shocked about that too. For him to be a psychiatrist, to be married to somebody like that, and I did not think that the mom had any redeeming qualities. I know at the end she started to try to come around, but she was just really, really horrible to her own daughter. I couldn't imagine a parent saying that to their own child and really putting them down in that way. It was horrifying.
I will say this, so that hit a lot of the book hit straight home with me, but I kind of felt the same kind of thing for my mom. And then I was researching, I didn't realize that the author, her dad had passed away at a young age, which my dad did also. And so she talked about how she wrote the dad kind of in the sense of what she wanted a father to be. So after I listened to that, then I was like, oh gosh, I'm crying even more. But I do agree at some point that, he could have stood up for more, but it also bothered me. And it kind of, I think, shed light into their marriage dynamic that she hid a lot from him, that she wasn't taking him to the surgeon and all these other things. So it makes me wonder what more was going on in that marriage, because if you're lying to your spouse and also doing things like that to your child, I just couldn't imagine it.
and then on the reverse, he was hiding things from her, like when she flew to see her friend and she was like, I'm sure dad bought me 2 seats so I would be more comfortable, and I'm sure mom doesn't know about it. Like, he would do things to help Ellie, like taking her for frozen yogurt, things like that, with behind the mom's back too.
I was kind of on the fence with some of her ways of getting back at her mom. Like, I know that you have to stand up for yourself, and I know that you want to speak up and let your family members know how you feel. And I was proud of her, but then also like, ooh, if I would have done it at my house, that would, that I wouldn't have gotten away with it. The messages that she was posting, I felt like what she did was meaningful, and I felt like it was impactful. And I think she almost had to take it to that level in order for her mom to understand what she was going through. For example, at the end of the book where she gives her mom the book of all the things, all the bad things she's ever said, and then she's like, you carry the weight of it. I think like an adult to an adult, like that's like a mic drop. But then when I think of like a kid to a parent, I'm almost like, yeah, your mom is wrong, but that's your mom. And there's got to be some level of respect. Like, I was kind of, I don't know, sometimes I feel like in standing up for herself, she kind of crossed the line, like with the parent, daughter dynamic. Maybe that's just me.
Point.
But I don't think she crossed that line that, like, Dr. Wood was clear on defending yourself versus attacking. And I don't ever think really that she attacked her mom so much as she was defending herself. Like, the posting articles about parents who are supportive of their children and things like that, it's kind of passive aggressive, but it wasn't attacking her mom. Handing her the notebook probably was hurtful, but it wasn't attacking her mom. It was saying, like, this is how I'm feeling. And I felt like it was more in defense of herself.
And I will say too, I think like when you grow up in a household where, it is that stereotype of there's family problems, but you have that stereotypical like parent support, then it's easy to look at some of the things and be like, I know I wouldn't do that to my mama. But I think like also like breaking some of those stereotypes and realizing, not all parent relationships are like that. And again, I'm getting a little personal because I had that relationship with my mom, and there was times that I've had to, kind of been like Ellie in that sense. And on the outside to somebody else, it may sound like, gosh, like how could you do that to your mom? But also like the mom playing that into her, and just I think that was another aspect of the book that I liked, not only the aspect of like fat shaming and the horrible things, but also those important family dynamics, and learning that even your loved ones can do things that, aren't right. Sorry, that was my little soapbox with that.
Amy,
no, but
I agree with you. It's okay. I agree with you. I had a kind of similar situation with my mom growing up, and always struggled with my weight. And I wonder if, she and her mom, perhaps her mother had some past trauma that caused her to behave, it's generational. And so I really wonder what pain she was hiding by, projecting that onto her child, and why it was that particular child when it wasn't one of the others, in the household. If perhaps she had that same struggle and she kept going to the bariatric surgery kind of route, I wonder if that's, an issue in her family when she was growing up. I don't know, but it was immediately what I thought of. And I really wish that they had not just sent her to therapy like there was something wrong with her, but maybe done a family counseling. I would have loved to have seen them bring that into the story, because I feel like there was a lot of issues that people could have worked out,
That brother was nasty.
Yeah, he was. But about that therapy thing, Emily, I think how we were talking about the dad and the mom not having seemingly the best communication. And I think that the dad saw that Ellie needed to talk to someone who could build her up and maybe help get her confidence up so that she could stand up for herself, because he wasn't able to get through to the mom. Maybe I'm imagining some secret conversation that he lost, some discussion that he lost with the mom. But
and there towards the end, the parents did come in to therapy with her for that one session. And I do feel like that was probably helpful and kind of started clearing a path for them to talk a little bit better.
I also appreciated how when Ellie was going through maybe the passive aggressive ways that she was trying to communicate with her mom, like taking the scale and breaking it into parts and like putting it underneath at the end of the garbage can, it wasn't just like she tried one thing and it worked. It's like she tried this, and you could really feel her struggle for like, how do I, as a sixth grader, if I recall correctly, handle this very adult dealing with my emotions. And I just appreciate that it wasn't a one and done. It was definitely a process. And I agree with Emily. The mom had baggage. Like there was something going on there.
A lot.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot definitely going on there. We could really love to kind of get more into her story, her backstory, to kind of make her a little bit more human, because it was just so hard to even deal with some of the stuff that she was doing. But I think you all are right. There's something there. But imagine having to deal with that all the time, not just at school. We know that school can be a haven for bad behavior for some kids, and you know, and end up having a bad experience. But I mean, she also had to deal with it in her own house. I mean, she never got a break from it. That was the part that really just weighed on me so heavily.
Oh, but I will say, this was one of my favorite parts. She got a break in the library. And as a librarian, I was all about that. And I was like, oh, I bet you Pam is loving this part of this book.
Yes, I'm like, yay, library champions.
It said, it's unknown how many students' lives librarians have saved by welcoming loners at lunch. And that just made my heart sing. I love that so much.
Yeah.
She got a break at the neighbor's house too, that moved
Catalina.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Love that family.
I was just going
They
to
were
say that
great.
too. On a lighter note, let's talk about Catalina's family. Oh my gosh, the way they were just so accepting, like nobody, it wasn't even a thing. And Catalina was just so natural with like being a friend. I thought that was lovely.
Yeah, she was a really good friend. And you think how long she waited to get in that pool with that swimsuit under her clothes every time, but she took her time. She knew that she just couldn't cannonball in, that she waited until she was invited. And it takes a good friend to know that, like when to give you space. And, you know, I really like that part.
Well, I
And
like
I
the
would have loved,
symbolism of that too, because she was kind of tiptoeing into that friendship, not just the pool, but, you know, waiting until she was ready to receive that. Like, I'm here whenever you're ready, you know?
I love that Catalina like was going through her own struggles. I wish that the book almost would have went into that like a little bit more of what she was going through, you know, being seen as an immigrant and things like that. I almost think that could be a whole another book, you know, from her perspective. But I think that was just the person that she needed, and the friend that she had prior in the beginning of the book that ended up moving. I thought that was a beautiful friendship as well.
And I know there was really no place to put this in a story, but Kelly, were you with me when like I kept waiting for like Ellie's poetry to go with Catalina's guitar and like them to create something together?
Book 2.
Yeah.
The songs of Catalina and Ellie.
Yes, absolutely.
But it was great that they both saw themselves, you know, as poets and writers, and was able to use that as an outlet to really express themselves. And a lot of kids find themselves in there where you can't say certain things, but you could really write it and take time to really be intentional about what you say. So I love that that was included.
Somebody else that I would love to see in the second book, and I don't know if you guys really grasped onto this character or not, but the lady in the clothing shop. I would love to see her, because to me it's almost like Ellie had somebody from her past, her friend. She had somebody from her present, Catalina, and then like somebody for the future, like somebody who's already walked that path and came out okay on the other side. I would love to see the shop owner again.
Yes, Diana. I wrote her down
Diana,
because
yes.
I really liked her. And another character that I really thought we were going to get more into, but never did, was enemy number 3. Like when the librarian paired them, there was just really that one scene, and I really wanted them to kind of understand each other a little bit better, so that she would have somebody at school her age kind of on her side. Like she had a couple teachers, but that gym teacher made me mad. But she had a couple teachers who stood up for her or were nice, but she didn't really have anybody at school whoever was on her side or came to her defense.
There was the thing at the shelter where she saw him trying on shoes and she just like stepped away. And I like that because I feel like it wasn't like clearly like body image was a major focus of the book, but there was also focus on how other students are struggling, like being viewed as an illegal immigrant or being an illegal immigrant or being homeless or being, you know, poverty level. So I like that there was a lot of different things that students struggled with in this book. So it wasn't just a one track focus.
Well, and I think too, you know, I would have liked to have seen them kind of have a kinship, but at the same time, middle school is brutal. Mm-hmm. And you think about real middle school relationships, you don't always bond with the people that hurt you, you know?
Yeah.
And kids hold on to stuff and it's hard, and she's still growing and he's still growing. And like you said, maybe if we have some more books down the road, I could definitely see that develop, but they're still developing.
That's very true. And I'm trying to find the line because it was a really powerful line where she basically said that she was going to give him the respect that he wouldn't give her in terms of letting him have that space, not intruding on the fact that he needed financial support and kind of exploiting that. And that again just spoke to her character. So yes, there were some times where Ellie had to be very direct and really speak up, but she's such a great, pure person because she's always thinking of ways that she can not stoop down to other people's level, which I love that. Now, I also want to go back really quickly about the clothes. So, you know, she went to that shop because her dad took her to get some clothes. It made me so mad that she was the only child in that home that did not get new clothes for school. I could not imagine doing it as a parent. That is just evil.
Well, and then when
one thing if you can't.
Marissa and Courtney ripped it, her beautiful top that she was so excited about.
It's one thing if as a parent you're unable to provide, but to make the choice not to, I can't get with it. I can't.
It was so dirty. This was what the quote was. He might not deserve that kindness, but I know that he needs it. That was just so gracious that somebody 11 years old would say that about somebody else who had bullied them and making a big deal when you walk by that you're going to extend that kindness because you know the person needs it. And that's for everybody who misbehaves, an adult or a child. When we know they need kindness because they've got a lot of stuff going on, and that's why they're acting out.
And I don't think she would have done that prior to having started meeting with Dr. Woods. Like, I don't think she was in a place to have been that gracious.
I think Ellie had a lot of adult thoughts and realizations way before I had them. I mean, think about how old you were, and maybe it happened sooner for some of you than me, but how old you were when this whole be a starfish, you know, take up as much room as possible. Before that, you were comfortable doing that. I was an adult. I was in the 6th grade for sure. Trying to starfish.
I hadn't even heard that until this book, to be a starfish. Like I put myself in a little compartment and try to stay out of everybody's way generally, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the way I was raised. You don't make waves. You don't do anything that's going to draw attention to yourself. Right. I mean, that's my upbringing. And so that was totally new for me.
Great concept for kids to really be able to grasp that it's okay for you to be your true, authentic self and show yourself to the world.
Is being a starfish, is that a thing, or is it from this book? Like if I went to someone and say like, oh, I love how you're being a starfish and just being out there, or is that not a thing?
I've heard it before. I think I thought it was a thing because I had heard it before, but I'm not sure.
I was going to say that I loved the counselor. I thought she was amazing with her lightsabers and all the different things. I thought that it was amazing how, you know, Ellie came in there and she sat in her chair like, I'm going to show you what's up. And then she just drew Ellie out in so many different ways. And I loved reading the therapy sessions. I thought that was fantastic.
Very much like an educator having to come up with different ways to reach different kids. And yes, Dr. Wood had all the tricks. One of the quotes I want to throw out that I really liked, but I kind of wanted to revise it a little bit. The quote was, does everybody make somebody feel like a nobody? And like that, I thought was really powerful, but I almost want to rewrite it, or to go along with that, maybe not rewrite it, but add to it. Does everybody have somebody who makes them feel like a nobody?
Or somebody that makes them feel like a somebody.
Yeah.
That's what I'm more so concerned about, because I don't care about somebody who attempts to try to make me feel like a nobody. It will never happen. You can
That's
try,
not
But I
it
think,
will never
but I
happen.
think the way that Sam's just like how you reworded it is like, am I alone in this feeling? Like, are there other people who also have somebody who kind of, make them feel small? So that's how I took it when you rewrote it.
Yeah,
Well, and
that's
she
kind of what I
kind of
was thinking.
she had a moment like that where, trying to empower herself, she kind of made people feel small. And so I think it was a learning process of how do I empower myself without being one of them? That's a tough lesson.
That's a
But
good
she only
point.
did it one time. She didn't really kind of dig in, and they were kind of backing up, but that still didn't stop. It's kind of like it was making Amy made me think of this in some ways. Some people, they act like they don't understand some things. It's like you have to talk a certain way to get them up off of you because they just don't get it. And Marissa and Courtney were like that. She made those personal comments about their skin and nose and things at one time. That should have been enough for them to back up. They stole that girl's dog.
Dog. Stole the dog. I was
The
so mad
dog.
about that.
Well, and put her in the floor in class, took the screws out of her
The
chair. I
screws
mean,
out of
I
the
cannot
desk.
imagine that happening at my kids' schools and them getting away with it
Yeah,
like
with the
that.
things poking all in her skin and
There
And
was
we
some
talked
It made
about
me
ugly
that for
so
a
crying right
sad.
second.
there. That was awful.
Where were the adults? I was so mad. I kept
where
thinking, where are the teachers? Where are the administrators to deal with this? Because you need to have a zero tolerance policy when somebody takes the screws out and humiliates a child like that. That's
Well, but
unacceptable.
there's levels of that, Marlo, because it didn't just go straight to the chair thing. Every time something would happen, they're talking over the teacher, or while the teacher
Yeah.
in my brain, while the teacher is talking and having all this, sidebar, and I'm thinking nobody's going to say anything to them about all these comments that they're saying. So I feel like they at some point we work with kids, they push and they push to see how much they can get away with. And taking the screws out is not surprising when you've done all that other mess beforehand
I got to
and
say,
got
That
away
one of
was
with
the
rough.
it.
quotes that I highlighted makes me think of what you just said. History books are full of horrible things happening because people sit back and do and say nothing. That's exactly what they did. And because that had been let to happen over and over again, they thought, okay, this is fine. This is acceptable because I'm not getting called out for it. If they're not taught to be accountable, if they're not taught that's not appropriate, why would they think otherwise?
That's why I love
And it
that
makes it seem
that
like they're in
line.
agreement.
Yeah. That's why I love that line that Ellie kind of threw back to Mr. Harrington. He was like, just go home and cry. And he was like, your daughter, is that what you're going to tell your daughter and teach your daughter instead of like addressing this as the adult? She was like, your daughter deserves better than this. And then he was like, yeah, my daughter does deserve better. It's like, you can't allow people to say and do these things and get away with it because it will go to that next level where we're taking screws out of the chair and kidnapping your dog.
I thought Ellie was
Yes.
so funny too. Like I just loved her as a person. Like she was absolutely hilarious. And I think it goes into like all the figurative language with the verse. But I thought she was so funny. All her little lines, and I think that's what made it hard. It's like she was this wonderful person, with this great personality and this great sense of humor, and all of her physical appearance was being overshadowed. Like that's what really made me sad because she was great.
I really think her personality didn't fit in that tiny little town. She is destined for bigger things because she's brilliant. Her creativity, I feel like she's going places.
I love her.
I
Any
wish we
other
would have had
final
a moment
thoughts?
with the brother. Oh, sorry. I was going to
No, go
say, I
ahead,
wish
Amy.
we had had like a come to Jesus meeting with the brother because she never really got that, like with the sister and with the parents, but she never really got that like come to Jesus meeting with her brother. Like, this is what's up. This is what you're doing. So I wish we'd had that because he made me mad too.
He was just
The
really
whole book.
deplorable. I mean, he just never improved in any way. And I wish the daddy could have just done more. I mean, than just take his keys and ground him. It's like, we don't talk to people like that. You don't talk to women like that. I mean, if you're talking like that about your sister, what are you going to say about a girlfriend or a wife or another woman? I mean, it's just straight up disrespectful. He didn't have any redeeming qualities in my mind, not presented in the book.
He was clearly emulating his mother. And there was no one's telling him not to.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the kids at school. You know, you just keep pushing it. So it was just like Marlo said at the beginning. It's just, I mean, it's just a cycle. Nobody ever, it doesn't get corrected. It just gets worse and worse and worse.
I wonder if some of it's cultural too, because you look at, her neighbor's family was more accepting in general. And, I think culturally they're more accepting of people of different sizes in Hispanic cultures. And, the white cultures, stick thin so much. I wonder if some of that played into that because it's just nationally accepted. Every magazine is a teeny tiny person on the cover. It's kind of ingrained in them from birth. And I wonder if that's just, maybe they didn't even recognize that it was an issue because it was just always there in front of them that way.
But the aunt almost died from bariatric surgery. I'm like, how are you going to what? That I can't.
I would have loved to have seen a scene with her and Ellie, Aunt Zoe and Ellie, and kind of just, because she also, dealt with her weight and tried to go the surgery route, or did go the surgery route, was very, you know, very dangerous for her because she almost died. But I think that would have been a really powerful scene to see what kind of interactions they had because of their similar experience.
I can't imagine having my child had to have surgery. That's not something we elected to do. And I remember all the emotions wrapped around that. And so I can't even think of wanting to do that willingly. You know what I mean? To put my child to sleep and have somebody cut on her. I just can't. No.
And pushing before even a medically recommended age for something like that. I mean, just how young, and the articles that it really kind of turned my stomach the way the mom carried on about that. She kept looking at the problem as being her size and not addressing all the other issues of acceptance or, is she satisfied with herself as a human? It was not really Ellie's issue, it was mom's issue.
I want to bring up
very obsessive. Okay, Pam, you have the last comment.
Okay. I wanted to bring up maybe an unpopular opinion, but I kind of felt like Viv was unnecessary, like her friend, because she moved away right at the beginning, and she just kind of came in sporadically, and then she went and visited her. But I feel like taking that time or that space in the book to have developed a relationship with her aunt, and she could have gone to visit her aunt over the break just as easily. I really didn't quite feel like Viv was necessary. I liked her.
Pam, I'm not giving up my virtual friends now. I mean, I just met Kelly maybe Kelly a couple months ago. Kelly and I knew each other like a whole year before we met in person. So I'm not giving my friends virtually, Pam. Sometimes we need our virtual friends.
Viv was real. Viv was in her life. Viv lived in the same
She
town
moved.
as her.
I know, but I'm saying they continued their relationship afterwards. After she left, they still were able to stay connected. You trying to make her lose
I
that?
feel but I think that she was necessary. I think she was necessary because it's kind of like when it rains, it pours. And I think that that's kind of the situation that they were trying to build in the beginning, is not only is she struggling at school, but now the person that she would confide in, her best friend, is gone. She's not feeling support at home. It's like all of these things. And now she has space for a new friend. And now
Catalina came in at that same time. And so she really didn't have that emptiness of friendship.
But Catalina didn't come in as her bestie. Catalina had to get warmed up.
Yeah.
Because I think of Viv as she's like, a security blanket, and Catalina hadn't become the security blanket yet. They're not that tight, that takes time.
Right. Which I loved at the end that they all three were able to get together and were able to still bond and be friends. And as friends, we don't all have to have the same opinions. We're talking about the book and giving our assessment. So when we return, we're going to talk with the author of the book. Lisa Fipps joins us in just a moment. We'll be right back. We are back on the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club, and we're now being joined by Lisa Fipps, author of Starfish, a 2022 Michael L. Prince Award for Excellence in Young Adult Literature Honor Book. Lisa, we are so grateful for the opportunity to chat with you and have you on the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I enjoyed meeting you guys.
Oh my gosh, this book is so delightful. There's so much for us to talk about. So we want to just start in terms of what really prompted you to write Starfish, because you have really you've written a book that really has us thinking and really just seeing how it applies to our lives, and just, I mean, it's so real and relatable. What prompted you to write the book?
Um, well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I see it as characters coming to me to tell me for me to tell their story. And so Ellie came to me to tell her story, but I think she chose me because her story's my story. You know, I was fat as a kid, I'm fat now. And I think she knew I could tell it with truth and authentic emotion. And so I've used a lot of my own personal experiences so that I could have that authentic emotion. You know what I mean? Kind of reliving it, which is probably not the best way to write a book, is to relive all the worst moments of your life. But, you know, I did. So,
You
yeah,
use
so
it to
that's,
help other people.
yeah, exactly, which is the whole point of writing, right? Is to help others.
Along
I
those
see it,
lines, Lisa, how did you have the courage to do it? Because I feel like I don't know if I would have made it all the way through. I might have just like stopped when it got too hard. How did you have that courage?
I think because I'd already lived it. You know what I mean? I think living it was much harder than retelling it. Not that retelling it wasn't hard, but when I was retelling it, I was looking in the rearview mirror instead of facing it. And I think that's what allowed me to get through it. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about this being from your personal experience and the fat girl rules that Ellie has for herself. Um, what are those real? Were those real for you? And do you think that everybody has like a set of rules that they kind of govern themselves by?
I absolutely do, especially fat girl rules. I was just talking yesterday to a group for National Eating Disorders Awareness Month or Week, and there was the person who was leading it is fat herself, and as soon as I started mentioning, she just started like throwing them out there, like, oh, and there's this one, oh, and there's this one, oh, and there's this one, and not that they're all like universal, but there are a lot of universal ones. Does that make sense? Like, you wear dark clothes, and I know I'm wearing black, but this is because it's my warmest sweater, not because I'm trying to hide. But you know, you wear dark clothes. You don't wear horizontal stripes. You and I know exactly, like when you're sitting, like when you're in public, you know, you kind of bring your shoulders in. You try to be small because you don't want to accidentally, you know, like if you're in a restaurant and you're walking to get to your table and you pass a table, right? So if you're a thin or average sized person and you bump into someone, it's just like, oops, you know, no big deal, not intentional. But if you're fat, you get looked at differently. Like, gee, you're taking up all the room. Gosh, you know, stick to yourself, keep your body to yourself. You get a different vibe back. And so you learn to be as small as you can. And you try not to do anything that would make your fat jiggle or move, because, you know, people will then notice it as if they don't notice it. But, you know what I mean? It just draws that extra attention. There's all kinds of fat girl rules. Yeah.
So one thing that I wondered, because I kind of had a similar experience growing up, you know, struggling with weight and all that. And I didn't have this book when I was in middle school, and I wish I had. What would you say to, you know, younger you or girls like us that struggled at that age, to give them that advice so they can kind of find themselves and not have, I mean, the same struggles that she experienced in the story?
I'm getting over bronchitis, so I'm trying not to cough on you. Are you saying, like, what would I say to little Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a lot of discussions about that with my therapist of what you say to little Lisa. And I think the big message is, there are several. I think one is that you survived the best you knew how, right?
But the thing is, you made it through. And not only did you make it through, but I always thank little Lisa all the time, because I wouldn't be who I am today without her. And so I think that she gave me the strength. She was so much stronger than adult Lisa. Like, she had to be. She had to be. And I think that, you know, there's so much when things happen to you that can either break you or make you. And I think that, yes, there were some brokenness in that, but I think that it really made me rather than broke me. And it's interesting because I get people who read Starfish, and obviously, you know, it's written for middle grade / lower YA. And what's interesting is that people pick it up because it looks like a beach read, right? And I got so many people last summer who picked it up at like Barnes and Noble, and it was like, oh, a beach read, but they were adults. And they just picked it up because, you know, how you do in a bookstore. And they picked it up and then they read it and they're like, oh my gosh. And then I get all these emails. And I've gotten emails from people, obviously children, but also teens, 20s, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, emailing me and saying, this is the book I needed when I was a kid. And you healed parts of me that I didn't realize were still broken, and things like that. And I do think that that's that little Lisa factor that you're delving into, where even though you didn't get to read it when you were a kid and it wasn't on the market then, I think that there's a lot of healing to be done for people who even read it as adults now. Yeah.
I have so many favorite characters, including Dr. Wood and Dad and Ellie, but Catalina is in there too. Did you have a Catalina, or where did you get Catalina from? Because I love her.
Oh, I do. I love her so much. You know, and it's so funny because when I'm writing, I get like these little video clips in my head, and that's like, I just watch the scene, and then I that's kind of how the characters come to me. When I saw her the first time and she was on the trampoline, I was like, oh, this is my girl, because she was so much fun and so sweet. But she was more of a composite character. She was, and several of those characters in there are composite characters. They're, you know, I took a little bit of this person that I had in my life, a little bit of this person. And then there's some, as a kid, and then there's some parts of Catalina that are a little bit of me. And then there's a little bit of Catalina that was a woman that I worked with as an adult. So it's just kind of really good mix of getting that personality together. But yeah, I love her.
And your librarian, because Emily and I were both like, yay for the librarian in your story. How do you pronounce her last name? And I just love that she was a real person for you.
She was Mrs. Pochon. She was from Canada, and she had this very strong Canadian accent, and she was amazing. And I'm trying to actually run down her family so I can let them know that, you know, I honored her that way. I think the great grandkids and grandkids would like to know, but she always had a smile. Every time I walked in, she smiled at me, you know, and I have all these other people sneering and making all these faces at me, and she's smiling and she wants to see me, and she provided a refuge for me. And so she's the best. And it's one of the many reasons why I love libraries and librarians.
So I loved everything, obviously, but I really loved how you touched on strained relationships within the family dynamic. And I had read that you had previously lost your father at a young age, and I had too. So therefore, I did kind of have a strange relationship with my mother. But how do you think that aspect played into your book, and what advice do you give to kids in that aspect of, you know, standing up for themselves with their own family?
Yeah, that's really hard. Yeah, my dad died when I was 13 months old, so I never knew him. And so a lot of kids are like, how did you write about the dad? And I was like, this is the dad I always needed and wanted. So that gave me a chance to, you know, have him. And he is based on a real character, Phil Montgomery, who was from Texas and lived on a ranch and very strong Texas accent, and which I cannot duplicate and will not try to, because I will not embarrass myself. But yeah, my mother was hypercritical of me, just like Ellie's mother. You know, my mom always supported my writing, my art, my music, but she never, ever, ever accepted my body or my weight. And she would say things like, when are you going to lose that weight? So I had to be ashamed of you. And she would say things like, when we would go to the dressing room to try on clothes for school, she would purposefully choose clothes that were smaller because she was trying to, in her own mind, I think, motivate me to lose weight so I could wear them. And then she would say things like, well, don't you want to be pretty like the other girls? And so I'm honest with kids when I do visits. I tell them these things. And I say, sometimes parents make mistakes, and I let them know that sometimes, they hurt us even if they don't mean to. But they can be our biggest bullies, and even if it's coming from your home, you have to get the bullying to stop because you deserve better. I tell kids that. And I also tell them it's interesting because how honest kids are. And so one child said, and well, more than one now, but the very first child who said it just kind of blew me away. And but I told them, that I had taken care of my mother for the last 15 years of her life. She had Alzheimer's. She died last April. And this little boy, he raises his hand and he was angry. And I liked that because he was being protective of me, right? He was being protective of me. But he was like, why did you take care of her when she's so mean to you? You should have put her in a home. And I started laughing, but it gave me a teaching moment because then I said to them, but how she treated her is on me. I mean, how she treated me is on her. How I treat her is on me. And I think so. I think there's a way that you can not only, first of all, show that, no matter who the bully is, you don't deserve it. No matter who the bully is, you need to confront it. But also, no matter how people treat you, you have a choice on how you treat others. So, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. I loved it. It was like therapy for me.
Oh.
There's so many
Lisa,
excellent. Oh, I'm sorry, Marlo. Go ahead.
I'll just say this, Kelly, and then you can have your question. Lisa, I also love just how you normalize therapy as well. That she went to go see Dr. Wood, and for kids to be able to read that, and I thought that was really a great addition to the book.
I really believe in it. I mean, I needed it when I was a kid and I didn't get it. I have a therapist now, but I think that that's one of those things where, this world is not an easy place to live, especially right now with all we've gone through with COVID and all the other things that we've gone through. Mm-hmm. And I think that kids need to know that sometimes you need to look to someone else for help. Because even, and especially if the problem is your parents, you can't go to them if they're the problem. So you need to be able to, you need to be able to do that. And it's okay to do that. And I always tell people, if you love Dr. Wood or Dr. Wood, you like to know, if you like her, you can find one like her. And if you don't, keep going until you do. Find one that works for you. So thank you. I appreciate that because I do think it's important for people to know that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, I was going to ask you, there's so many characters in here that I want to know more about. So if you had the opportunity to either expand the book or maybe do a sequel, which characters would you want to expand upon and tell us more about, or which maybe a character?
Yeah, it's so interesting because the very first author visit I did, the very first question was from a little boy. And he said, is there going to be a prequel or a sequel? And I started to laugh, right? Because I was like, and I told him, I'm not laughing at you, honey. It's just that I never even thought of that. You know what I mean? And because I'm not a series girl, I don't read a lot of series. I don't think in series. I definitely don't write in series. But I've had that so much. And even the Prince Committee was like, is there going to be a sequel? And I'm like, and so Nancy Polson and I are like, should there be a sequel? But so I definitely am starting to think about it now. I'm so sorry to cough. One of the things I'd like to explore is either Ellie, just a little bit older, and really, what that would look like. According to all the kids that I talked to, that Ellie's parents need to get divorced because they hate the mom and they want her out of the book. But so that's always funny. But I think also Viv, because Viv is like the anti-Ellie, right? I mean, she's fat like Ellie, but she had the supportive, loving, encouraging, accepting mother. And that tells a whole other story. And so And then, I love Catalina and I'd love to tell more, but I also feel like I could do her as a secondary character. I feel like as a protagonist, that since I myself am not an immigrant, I should leave that to an own voices writer. Because I mean, my grandmother was an immigrant, but I'm not. And so I'm kind of torn. And some people want to hear enemy number 3 story. Yeah. And so I will tell you that book 2 is sort of like enemy 3 story because it deals with poverty, children living in poverty and raising themselves. So I kind of see that as like how enemy number 3 would have lived. So I feel like I'm kind of touching that one and kind of dealing with that one.
Well, that's great. We certainly will be picking that up whenever you finish book number 2. And great job, Lisa, on book number 1.
Thank
It was so
you.
delightful to read. I loved every single page and the story and the characters. Even the characters I didn't like, it still made me think. And I was so invested, like I really didn't like those people. But you did such a really great job. If you want to, so we're really appreciative of you coming on the show. To stay up to date with Lisa's work, please visit her website, authorlisafipps.com. You can also follow her on Twitter at authorlisafipps. When we return, we'll discuss some instructional strategies if you want to teach Starfish. And why wouldn't you want to teach Starfish? It's so good. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
We are back on the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club, and now we're discussing instructional strategies if you want to teach Starfish by Lisa Fipps with your students. Great, great book. What instructional ideas do we have?
I was so excited about this. I've been more like so inspired by this book that a lot of things were just coming out of this. So I'll try not to monopolize the conversation. But one of the ones that, and I know it's something that we do a lot, especially in ELA, where we rewrite from a different character's perspective or point of view. But I really think taking characters like Marissa and Courtney, and even like Catalina, and writing some of those key scenes from their point of view or where they were at in their headspace could be really powerful for kids.
I don't think I could get that dark. They were some dirty, dark people.
Well, and I kind of hope that that's what the kids would say too. Like, like maybe I would stop and rethink about what's going on here or what I'm saying or doing.
Well, leaning into that, my a quote that I liked from the book was words are tools, not weapons. And maybe de-weaponizing some language possibly. So I don't know, rewriting like heated emails or letters, because you can always find that kind of stuff on the internet. And just choosing word choice, basically choosing better words to get your point across.
That's good.
I had also thought about a writing activity, kind of like you, Pam, but not focusing on the character, focusing more on the style of the writing, because this was all written in free verse. I could see, taking a piece of it and, okay, now you're writing it as a journal entry. Now you're writing it as, prose. Now you're going to make it an email or something like that, like make it a rap and perform it, different ways to share that information and kind of get into the characters' heads a little differently, because that style can totally change the way that scene is conveyed.
Our school has the Choose Love SEL program, and I really like it, but it's also got me wanting to now get permission to go build a fire outside, because I loved the whole thing of them writing down like every mean thing and burning it. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that on school grounds, but I would really like to. But I think
the shredder.
Yeah, something. But I think that this is a great book for SEL. And I know when we had the school counselor of the year on talking about all the small groups that she did, if it's a small group of children that, they struggle with body image, I think this would be an excellent, small book novel set to do with them. But it's a lot of great things for SEL.
Well, and Amy, I will say we went to a teacher retreat years ago where they did something similar, but you could just have them ball it up, throw it away, stomp on it, whatever, but it can be cathartic to get those negative thoughts out. I mean, I agree with you. That's powerful.
I may just be a pyromaniac and want it to be fire.
And also help them to replace it as well, because that was something else in the book, that you don't just, get those negative thoughts out, you got to then replace those with something positive to kind of rebuild yourself and lift yourself up. I'm always putting positive stuff in me. Y'all don't even try to put no negative stuff in me. It ain't gonna happen.
And going along with your SEL too, like I said before, like the defending versus attacking, I think that's a skill, especially in middle grades, especially in like late elementary and early middle grades. Learning how to defend yourself without attacking someone else. I think you could do a lot of exercises with that, just to give the kids those tools.
When we were talking to Lisa and she was mentioning like the different rules and like that were in the book, it made me think that each of us have our own rules that hold us back. And I think it'd be really interesting, and we could call it imposter syndrome for wherever we are, whatever it is, to write out that list. Like be real with yourself and write out what is holding me back. But then on the opposite side, what Marla was saying, flip it, you know what I mean? Like flip the script. What can I replace that with? That thought, how could I do that? So just to kind of really verbalize and tangibly see what it is that you think about yourself and how you could adjust those inner thoughts.
I think that's a great idea, Kelly. And I think that a lot of the things that we want to do with our classes concerning SEL, like not everybody feels confident to tackle some of those things. And so I would even suggest reaching out to your counselors and doing some kind of co-teaching so that when all those thoughts and emotions are coming out of the kids, that we do have additional support there. Because I know I would love to do some of those activities, but then you don't know what you're going to get out of it. Like you don't know what's going to come out of the kids. And I want them to feel safe and supported when that stuff comes out.
That's a fantastic idea, Risha.
I think incorporating the arts is powerful as well. You know, maybe doing a 6-panel representation of one of the scenes or something like that, because sometimes kids don't have the words, but they want to express themselves, or they're just not ready to talk about it. But that's a good outlet for processing those emotions and what comes up through the reading of that story.
Yeah, I love that Dr. Wood also included the art therapy, and it's so important to have these different outlets to be able to do that. I would love to talk with kids about their happy place and a chance to get more into their personality, because all these kids that are calling Ellie Splash, they don't even know how much she loves the pool because they never had a chance to really connect with her, and really kind of leaning in with kids like, what is your happy place? Where you know you want to make sure you're there when you're in that space, you know, you feel really content.
I'm even thinking about,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I was even thinking about just the title itself, Starfish, and what that means, you know, taking up as much space as possible and being comfortable with that, with who you really are, and doing some sort of what are you activity. What would you compare yourself to, or what do you want to be? I can remember going to a women's conference not too long ago, and we had to pick a fruit, like like compare yourself to a fruit. What do you think you are? And I chose a lemon, and people were like, a lemon because they're sour, you know? And I'm like, no, I don't think of myself as being sour. I feel like I'm zesty. I'm a whole lot at one time, but you know, a little bit of zest every here, you know, a little here and there is pretty good. So lemon. But I think kids would enjoy that, picking an inanimate object and explaining all the reasons why they are that thing.
Yeah, really taking that power, because I really love that Ellie did that in terms of the whale, where first people were using that against her, and then she just realizes how beautiful whales are and what they bring to the table, and was able to flip that. So I think that's really important. Go ahead, Amy.
So one of my favorite quotes was, an oyster can turn something irritating into a rare and beautiful pearl. People can do that too. So asking kids like who their oyster is, or like how to be somebody else's oyster. But that was really one of my favorite lines out of the story. Also from an ELA teacher, is a figurative language dream. So I could just see, you know, picking out similes, metaphors all day long, because it's beautiful.
Another one with going along with the quotes throughout this, we have pulled so many wonderful quotes from this book. And in the book, the bulletin board that she was doing was, you know, quotes and things like that. And Arisha and I before have done quote projects with our kids where we've done like the best first lines, or like they had to find and kind of illustrate a quote, do like fancy lettering and all of that, like a powerful quote from a book that they read. And I think just doing that, like quotes that speak to you, because so often, like I wrote so many down that really were powerful throughout. And I think that gives kids a lot, just finding those and having something to kind of go back to.
So I was just thinking, I actually didn't remember that activity until you brought it up, but I was in a webinar not too long ago, and this lady had a PowerPoint full of all these quotes, and they were all hers, and they were all great. We need to start quoting ourselves sometimes, and I think building that up in kids, that what are your thoughts about what it is you're reading, and um, create your own quote. What would somebody else want to say? Say something so impactful that somebody else wants to use your line. I think that could be awesome for kids too.
Helping our kids to be original as opposed to constantly feeding off what somebody else is doing and copying and trying to mimic being your original authentic self, which was such a big theme of this book, Starfish. Just be your real authentic original self. We want to thank everybody so much for watching this month's episode of the Tar Heel Teachers Book Club. We look forward to seeing you next time.